Hey everyone, welcome to Start Your Day with a Coach. I'm your host, Sean Butner, certified high performance coach. And this is a show where we help you ground yourself in personal development, high performance, and habits to advance your life. We have a really special show today. I'm going to be introducing you to my friend, Mike Ceely, who is a licensed marriage and family therapist and owner of Ceely Counseling, and also the founder of the Men's Therapy Directive, among other things. Michael's a former competitive cyclist and has 2 state titles. And during his cycling career, he participated in numerous championships and twice went to Olympic trials. So I hope we can talk a little bit about that. But with that, welcome, Michael.
Sean, thanks for having me on your show.
Totally. So in this interview format, I just want to ask you a couple of questions, and I think I'll ask everyone that comes on here. The first being, could you, other than what we already shared, is there anything else we need to know about you? What do you do, and how did you get into therapy and coaching?
Yeah, well, I'll give you the condensed version. So my first career was bicycle racing. I fell in love with bike racing as a teenager after seeing a movie called Breaking Away. Highly recommend it. It's a movie that came out in the early 80s. And I knew that I wanted to be a professional bike racer at age 14. So I really pursued that quite seriously for about 10 years till age 24, and kind of peaked out. I think I could have gone farther, definitely. Talk about that later, perhaps. But basically after that, after cycling, I became a high school Spanish teacher and went to Spain, fell in love with all things Spanish, got into that. Then I got into counseling, my current career. So I am a licensed marriage and family therapist in California, also in Wisconsin. And I absolutely love what I do. It is similar to what you do. Not certainly there's a difference between coaching and therapy, but what we both do is we help people achieve their goals and have more expansive lives, and absolutely love it. And so, yeah, it's great to be here today.
Oh, awesome. Yeah, that's pretty crazy to have all that accomplishment in the cycling by age 24. I didn't realize it was that early on in, your career, I guess. I don't know how to phrase that, but.
Oh, yeah. I started really young, really young. And that's really, as you know, with a lot of competitive sports, especially like gymnastics and things like that, baseball, if you start when you're young, you have a much higher chance of making it into the pro level. So
right on. So I think we'll get into a little bit more on that a little bit later. But sure. The question I love to ask people is, what does high performance mean to you, being a high performance coach? It's always interesting.
Yeah. I think that is, well, I know what it means for me personally, but also I think it's different for every person. I think that different people have natural interests, desires they want to pursue. I think in all of us as humans, I think there's a natural desire to grow and expand. And I think that's just hardwired into us. And I think that everyone has something in their life or several domains of their life that they really want to expand and improve on. And the trick is that's hard to do in the modern era. There's a lot of barriers there. There's a lot of messages out there saying you cannot expand, you don't deserve it, things like that. So I think high performance, I'll say for my clients, would be, I want to identify what the domains of their life they want to expand. So that could be finances, it could be relationships, it could be their career, it could be their spirituality, it could be really anything. But I think it's different for every person. And it takes a coach or a therapist to elicit those responses in the person. For me, high performance means I want to expand in all domains of my life. And that's challenging, but that means mentally, emotionally, spiritually, intellectually, everything. I love pushing myself. I love expanding that way. And so I think high performance means a natural, personalized expansion of your life.
Awesome. I love that succinct thing. And I love how you incorporated a holistic approach. it's not just your career, which I think a lot of people think, or performing in sports, or sports cars, like usually analogy I'll get, but to have the relationships around you high performant, and it could just be deep, loving relationships. It doesn't mean that you're creating things or whatnot. So, but yeah, between career and health and well-being and relationships, it's a really great, well-rounded approach. I'm just curious too, as someone that is pretty high performant, knowing you for a little bit, are there any challenges that come up for you along the way? Especially since I know you are pretty dialed in, haven't talked with you before.
Yeah. This is the great question because I'm reading a wonderful book right now that I highly recommend. It's called The War of Art.
Oh,
I have a play on words from Art of War, but it's called The War of Art. And it's by Stephen Pressfield. And it talks about, barriers to high performance. One of the big ones is he brings up this concept, something called resistance with a capital R. Mm-hmm. And for me, what that means, he has his own definition, but for me, that is my biggest barrier to high performance. And I think with clients I see as well, is this concept called resistance. And it's based essentially in the sort of the interplay or conflict between short-term pleasure and achievement on a daily basis or a minute-by-minute basis, and what truly makes you feel satisfied and fulfilled at the end of the day, right? So I think there is, humans are hardwired to live day by day, I think from our hunter-gatherer days, so that we need to satiate ourselves with food or, social media, or essentially anything that gives us a dopamine hit, right?
Right.
So that could be a lot of things. And I think the challenge for us for high performance is to recognize and not fault ourselves for being in this sort of human vessel that is very pleasure oriented in the short term, and getting some mastery over that and realizing that at the end of the day, truly what brings you the most joy is personal growth in relationships, that higher level growth, and not if you could eat some cookies or have a glass of beer. Like that stuff is so temporary. But that's I think the biggest challenge is the conflict between the momentary pleasures and distractions and what truly brings us joy.
I love that. That actually falls quite in line with my definition of high performance, which is consistently beating what's ever normal in your life over the long term without destroying your health and relationships. It's still kind of worried, but it's as concise as I can get it. But that idea that that big package of cookies today might help you in a sugar rush, get something really done in a very short amount of time. Over time, they're going to be more lethargic, exhausted, lower energy because you're not taking care of the vessel. So,
right.
I absolutely love that distinction. And I love it. I've read that book a while back ago, and I took away the same thing as try to be very aware of in my business or in other areas of my life, where are you holding back or avoiding or meeting that capital R resistance. So
yeah. And I also think a big thing is to not blame yourself for being wired this way, for being wired for pleasure, right? Mm-hmm. But at the same time, don't let yourself off the hook. Right? So it's kind of because there can be a lot of shame and you can be really discouraged and kind of give up too soon before meeting your goals if you think that, it's, I should have more willpower over these cookies or whatever. But if you realize that here's my vessel, my body craving sugar and sort of brain food. Oh, that's what's going on. It's not entirely, my fault. So, so I think, diminishing some of that, the self-blame there can really decrease the likelihood of somebody sort of quitting before their goal is achieved.
Oh, definitely. Yeah, I love that. Yeah. So, okay. So with that conversation on high performance, I'd love to hear how that might have related to your experience in competitive cycling. A lot of other folks that I've talked to or interviewed come from education or entrepreneurship. But it's always interesting to talk to high level athletes. Having been an athlete myself, but not at high school level, like shot put and disc and all that stuff. Kind of a different game when you're really invested in it. So, so you watched the movie and inspired you to really get into it. What do you think are a couple or maybe you could tell the story of your career a little bit and maybe lessons as you learned them throughout, if that sounds
sure.
good.
Yeah. So again, I'll do the short version there, but essentially I was 12 years old and I went and saw this movie randomly at a theater in Madison, Wisconsin, where I grew up. It was called Breaking Away. So I had no idea what this movie was about. I walked in and then I walked out transformed because it's one of these typical hero journeys, right?
Mm-hmm.
That someone from a small town, they go out and they have this achievement, personal growth. And so that just totally lit me up. I knew I wanted to be a bike racer. And so I spent probably the first 3 years getting confidence in that arena. I'd done athletics before that, but I was always kind of a small kid. So I was not picked last in PE, but like close to, right? So I think initially cycling gave me this personal confidence and I took it at my own pace and I got better. I started out not even finishing a race and then I, got mid-pack, finally won my first race. And so it built this self-esteem in me. And I met a lot of really cool people in the cycling world too. Made some great friends that I still have today. And so the first part was, seeing the movie. The second part was, actually wrote a blog about this, but it was about meeting this guy. His name is Tom, and he was a year older than me. He was 16, I was 15. And he was one of the best bike racers like in the whole Midwest, possibly in the nation. And I had the good fortune of staying with him. His family hosted visiting cyclists for this big event in Wisconsin. And I was placed with him and I was kind of like daunted. It's like, oh my God, I'm staying with this, almost like one of these idols of mine. And the big transformation in that experience was I realized he was just like me. He was just a human, just a person. And, he was cracking jokes and he was vulnerable, like everything. And he was either getting like second or third place in every race because there was a dominant cyclist there at the time. But like he was amazing. And that sort of rubbed off. And I started doing really well in cycling after I stayed with his family and got to know Tom because it's a peer group thing. So if the expectations of your peer group are at a certain level, you're just automatically going to gravitate to that level, whether that's a little bit beyond your reach or kind of like something you've already accomplished. You're going to be kind of mirroring those peer group norms. And so, I just started imitating him and I got a lot better. Wow. And then I think another big thing for me for cycling was when I was 15, my parents got divorced and I got sent to therapy, as teenagers sometimes do. Like, go to therapy. Like, I was very resistant. And fortunately, I had a wonderful therapist, this guy named Gary. And he really changed a lot of things for me. I was, starting to get good at bike racing and I was kind of bragging to him, but I hadn't really done really well. Like, I hadn't won a lot of races. I was getting like 4th and 5th. And I remember him during a session, like, I had 5th place in this race, and he sort of like mockingly claps like this. Kind of an old school technique. It probably wouldn't go over well today. But I had pretty thick skin. I was like, wow, you're mocking me. And he leaned in and he said to me, "You're playing it safe." And I was like, what? It's like, you're playing it safe. You're so much better than that. And I mean, I almost get emotional telling the story because it was like, he was so right on. And it applies exactly to what you do and what I do, is that people have this natural desire to grow in whatever aspect of their life, but oftentimes they're afraid. Mm-hmm. And oftentimes they play it safe, right? And so after he sort of gave me this speech during a therapy session, I went out and just lit it up. I was like, all right, I'm not going to play it safe. And it was, that was a big game changer for me in my cycling career. Wow. And those are really like that's probably the biggest landmark of those two stories. Tom, my friend, and Gary, my therapist, that really kind of set my career in motion. There's a bunch of other things I could tell you, but those are the primary ones.
Yeah, so to kind of recap, and I think maybe some takeaways for folks is you had your moment of interest, right, where you wanted to do cycling. Yeah. You moved at your own pace, which gave you the confidence to try. You got involved in the community and found a mentor of sorts who also taught you that we're just humans, right? And maybe it sounded like it took a little bit of the pressure off for you to kind of just be more yourself. Did I hear that right?
It did. I think it gave me permission.
Okay.
That's what it was. Yeah.
And then you had the guy, Gary, give you the kick in the butt to say, hey, you're better than this. You're better than you think. Show up more, and I'm sure a lot of conversations around how to break through that fear. So, I think, thinking through in my life when I've, in my tech career, when I reached higher levels of just being more technically competent, it's kind of was a mentor telling me, hey, like, you're better than this. And it started out as a hobby. So it's something I was interested in, worked at my own confidence. And then, I wonder if this is maybe a template for a lot of folks.
I suspect it is. I suspect that everyone has, that part of their life where they know they can level up, right? And they need, a coach or a therapist or somebody to provide the guidance because, there's a lot of barriers like we're talking about.
Yeah.
There's a lot of messages in the media, you can't do this, or there's the comparison syndrome where he's like, I should be like this person. So having a good guide is super important to navigate some of those barriers.
100%. The support, the process, and the guide to kind of help unlock your full potential. I think that's maybe if we could title the story, it's Unlock Your Full Potential.
So definitely.
That said, how can people contact you, follow up with you? I know you do an amazing video series on YouTube. Maybe talk about that. But what instead of feeding you something, what would be the best way for people to learn more about you and your businesses and what you do?
Yeah, the simplest way is just to Google my name. So Michael Ceely, and the last name is spelled C, 2 E's, L-Y. And so it's a unique enough name that you're going to get all my social media, website, everything on the Google hit. So
okay, and I'll put your website in the notes for this. Okay. And your YouTube channel, because I think it's pretty awesome.
Okay. Great, thanks.
Okay, Michael, thank you so much for being on Start Your Week with a Coach. Is there one habit or routine that you do to keep you happy, healthy, and productive to kind of just close out the show?
Yeah, I exercise every morning. I think a little bit of exercise for everybody is important. I think for me, just growing up as an athlete it's something that I just have to do to start my day. To honestly, just to get the biochemistry right, because there's a lot of great hormones and stuff that are produced from exercise. So I have to do at least 30 minutes in the morning right away.
Okay. So 30 minutes exercise in the morning. You heard it from Mr. Michael Ceely. Again, thank you for being on the show. We'll have your information in the notes, and we'll hope to talk to you soon, man. Take care.
Thanks, Sean. Great to be here.